sleeping. Get ready to go to bed. There it goes.
Sleeping.
So that's interesting.
Working.
It takes me to the home page when we are not live.
But if we're live, it takes you to the live page?
If we're live, it takes me to the live page.
I guess it knows that there's nothing going on.
Right.
Okay, we're live, so.
Interesting.
Very interesting. All right. Let's wait for someone to show up. Oh, there's one person. All right, we can get started.
Yeah, that's true.
Plus J.
Plus J. Let me refresh this.
Waiting for my notification. I don't see it. Good old reliable YouTube notifications.
Hey. Why did you do that?
I wanted to see if you were in the house. I was going to
Oh.
tell you something.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, we're
I got
good.
it.
All right,
At
so
least I got it.
yeah, Nicole's here. She knew to come.
I knew to show up
All
today.
right, good morning, everybody. It's you want to get started right away?
Yeah. Well,
Get rolling?
we're officially doing our 1 hour early summertime hours for
Yes,
the show.
summer schedule. It's very exciting.
In case you missed it.
Well, it's so nice out. It's light early. Why not get started
Kids
early?
wake up at 6 a.m.
Yeah. All right. So today we are going to cover we got some stuff that people sent us. We got some announcements. We'll get to all that stuff. So
Should we do the official
intro?
There is a chance that there's new people watching.
Oh yeah, there could be. Hey, it's Friday Live. I'm Mark.
And I'm Nicole.
And we're going to talk about woodworking and community-related stuff and woodworking.
More woodworking.
Yeah, so a couple of quick announcements before we get to a couple nice things that were sent to us. First of all, Patreon. If you want to help support the show, you can. That's at patreon.com/woodwhisperer. It's like a recurring donation that you can make, and you get some things in return, including your questions getting priority service on the show. And I have some of those pre-selected here. Nicole will get the rest of them from the YouTube chat room.
Yep.
So if you are here live, you can ask a question. I want to thank Alec McMahon for signing up, or as Nicole would pronounce that, McMahon.
McMahon. I better turn off my sound.
Thank you, Alec.
Oh. Yeah.
What's that? Someone at the door.
Yeah.
So thanks for supporting us, Alec. We really appreciate it. And
you.
everyone else who is signed up over on Patreon, thank you so much. What was the other thing? Hang chair.
Yeah.
Last day for the hang chair. I mean, you could order it after this, but the price is quite a bit more. If you bundle a couple of projects together, I think it's a 3 to get the maximum discount of 40%. All 3 projects in the guild will be 40% off. Today's the last day, though, for the hang chair. It goes off of the pre-order schedule, and it's a regular project starting tonight.
Yep.
Whenever I remember before bed. So
I love how real you are.
Yeah.
When I remember. I might forget.
It could very well
so
be tomorrow
you might
morning.
Get lucky.
Yeah, I could wake up tomorrow and go, oh crap. Either way, it's the last day. Get on it if you're interested. This is going to be a great build.
Yeah.
We did a watch party last night for the first time. So we in the guild, all
idea
guild
was
members. Mine.
Jason was asking me.
It's my idea.
Was it your idea?
Is this one of those times where
I
we
don't know. I
talk
was like,
about something?
Well, we develop it at you say something and I go, oh yeah, Facebook does that.
It was absolutely my idea. But I really appreciate your willingness to take that idea from me and take credit for it.
I couldn't remember. It seemed like it would have been one of my ideas.
It certainly might have. You're rubbing off on me.
Yes.
So we had this watch party where all guild members, whether you have the project or not, got to see the first 3 videos, and then the that live thing that we did just goes away. So you had to be there live to see it, and lots of people seem to enjoy that. So maybe we'll do more of that.
I was going to talk to you about it. I think, what's the next project coming out?
I think it might be Matt's tea spice box thing.
I really think that we should do
They can't see us, but go ahead. You can keep talking.
I think that we should do a watch party in the public space for at least your project.
Maybe.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, well, the trick with the watch party is having enough content to make it worthwhile. A lot of times, like me and Matt, when we do our projects, it's just in time, and we're lucky to have the first video out.
Yes.
And that's usually just, hi, today we're going to build this thing. You know, it's not the most interesting
Let's look
stuff.
at the history.
Let's look at the history of Adirondack chairs. In 1929, Joe Adirondack made a chair.
Is that true?
No. But that would be a great story.
I love it.
Okay. Should we get to some questions?
And,
we
don't
got stuff
worry
here.
if you missed the watch party. If you're a guild member, you're like, what? it was kind of a last minute
I
thing.
decided on Thursday and announced it on Thursday.
Yes.
And then we did it on Thursday.
Yeah. So you didn't miss an announcement. This was just
Yeah.
a wild hair up Mark's butt.
Whoa, easy. Okay. You got some stuff to show off, and then we can get to questions.
I do. So a few weeks back, we talked with Nicholas Moore.
How long have you had that week back? A few weeks back?
A few weeks back. Nicholas Moore was in the chat room, and we, Yoso
Make
is,
it so they can see it.
Sorry.
You wave it around like it's a flag.
I know. Yoso donated a guild project, and I gave it to Nicholas from Yoso. And Nicholas wanted to send...
Let's call them Yo-Yo.
Sorry, Yoso. So Nicholas wanted to send us his book that he wrote. He was a ranger, American Ranger in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Wow.
So this is a story by Nicholas called Run to the Sound of the Guns. And you can actually find this on Amazon, and he signed a copy for us. And yeah, I just got it like a few minutes ago from our mailbox, and I just wanted to say thank you to Nicholas. And I really hope you enjoy the guild. So.
This is really, this really exemplifies the mentality of a hero and how not that I am. I would absolutely run away from the sound of guns.
Yeah.
I would never run toward it.
Well,
it's just my instincts.
I understand.
And I'm glad
that.
there are people who are out
We're
there
very,
who
very lucky to
have the cojones, Nicole, to run to the sound of guns.
So yeah, I'm actually really excited. I bet you Tyler would like to read this too. Our friend Tyler, he's in the.
Oh yeah, he reads all kinds of military stuff.
So I might let Tyler. There's even pictures of Nicholas in here too.
Yeah.
And
cool.
His is it squad?
Sure.
So yeah, thank you, Nicholas. I did get the book. We also got a nice little pack from our friend. Oh, come on. Oh, I just closed it. Sorry, I can't do two things at once. I love it. Joe's C Woodworks. So this is Joe C, and he gave us some Dunkin' Donuts, and his granddaughter, Peyton, sent a couple gift cards for Mateo and Ava.
Oh, that's so nice.
So, Joe, I received your package, and he said a little pick-me-up for those summer hours.
Yes.
Joe and Debbie. Clemmer.
You guys are great. Thank you so much.
So that was really nice. And I love...
Folks are just too generous.
I love the little stick. You don't have any metal. Oh, wait a minute. Does it? No.
We might have some metal soon.
Doesn't do
Will
that.
the magnet stick to that steel thing, the System X thing we got? I wonder if that would hold the magnet.
Yeah. Well, when you put in the hall tree, I lost my freezer that was magnetic, so all of my magnets are now in a bag.
Well, we have this stuff on a dishwasher.
Yeah.
It falls off every time I open the door. Okay, well, let's get to our questions then.
Yay!
Speaking
I'm getting super chats, so we'll do all those too.
Speaking of Joe Clemmer, I've got his question here first. When using floating tenon joinery like a domino, what are the factors you use to decide the size of the tenon? Well, there are definitely rules to this. In fact, when I wrote Essential Joinery, I had to sit down and think of what those rules are. It sort of gets to a point in woodworking where you can go by instinct. You could look at the joint and say, is this giving me enough surface area? Is it penetrating deep enough into the adjoining piece? And then you just use that as your guide. It was actually something I had to sit down and think about to put numbers into it, because normally I don't think about numbers. I just go, yeah, that looks pretty good. So look it up. If you just Google, mortise and tenon dimensions, things like that. If you happen to have a copy of Essential Joinery, there's going to be some details in there as just general recommendations. But sometimes these general recommendations fall apart because you have to consider things like the thickness of the piece you're going into. So when there's a rule that says, it needs to, penetrate into the adjoining workpiece X number of times the size or the width or whatever it is, sometimes that doesn't work out because you can't always have consistent thicknesses for these workpieces going together. So you always have to add a common sense check to all of these things. And you know what, maybe I'll just kind of like copy and paste an excerpt from the book into the show notes or something for you. I don't have them off the top of my head, but like I said, being honest about it, I had to sit down, think about it, do a little research, and then kind of reverse engineer what my brain does when I just look at these things. But keep in mind, it's not as critical as some of those numbers may make you think. A lot of these joints are pretty darn strong as long as you get a reasonable amount of material into each workpiece.
I missed a super chat last week.
Oh,
Sometimes
baby.
I do that. YouTube is
no.
changing stuff around constantly, and
Stickers
Alfred
and
Chu, I missed your super chat. I apologize. He said, I got the Adirondack chair yesterday. Thanks for the sale. Now I don't have to wait for the 12 weeks before Christmas sale. Like,
And you never know, that may not be one of the ones that goes on
yeah,
sale.
yeah. I can't remember.
We have more projects than we have weeks now,
Yeah.
so it's tough.
So Alfred, thank you for the super chat. I'm sorry I missed. Hopefully you see this week.
Okay, so Brandon Scarborough wrote in. He said, happy Friday. I have an issue with my milling process, but I'm not sure where the problem's coming from. I start by jointing one face. Now he goes through the entire process. I'm going to try to make this a little bit shorter. He winds up jointing, planing, cutting at the table saw to get that parallel edge. Then he uses his Incra mitre 1000 on the table saw to cross cut the board, and he gets a perfectly square edge with the reference surface that he's cutting. What happens though is if he takes his square to the other edge and checks that cross cut, it's off by about 1/16 of an inch. So he's asking for help about this because he says he's got his miter slot and his table saw blade perfect. So he's got a dial indicator making sure testing on the same tooth as you work through the rotation. So his blade is in alignment with the miter slot, but he's still getting this weird result. So I looked at the whole thing, Brandon. The only thing that I could think is happening, you got to check the parallelity. You have to make sure that your fence is parallel with the blade as well. I don't think you mentioned that in your question. So if your fence is at a parallel, when you have that nice straight edge that you cut on the jointer and you go to make that parallel cut at the table saw, if something is off there, you may wind up with a non-parallel edge. So what I would recommend doing is taking your board, and once you make that cut at the table saw, immediately check the width at one end and compare that to the width at the other end. If those are the same, and then you also put a straight edge on the edge and you notice that it actually is true and straight, there is only one thing that can happen when you cross cut it. If it's square on one edge, it has to be square on the other. The way a lot of this geometry works out, you just reduce the variables and certain things have to be that way. Otherwise, something is off. Right? So if we know you're cutting square and we know the relationship of the miter gauge to the blade is square and you're getting that result, the only explanation is that when you're doing your rip and cutting that second edge is actually not parallel to the first edge. And it's a matter of figuring out exactly why that happened. All right, so that's the thing I would investigate. Get into that. Digging deep, baby.
Nicholas is in the chat room and he said thanks. He's loving the guild. So I'm
sweet.
really happy to hear that.
That's Nicholas Moore?
Yep, Nicholas Moore.
Excellent. He's the guy who I busted his balls a little bit.
You did. He said he's used to,
He's in the military.
Yeah.
That's nothing, I'm sure, compared to what he has dealt with.
Kenneth Dunn did a quick super chat and said, free YouTube premium dollars for you. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thanks, Kenneth.
I got a question here from Jason Spenny. Hello, how would you join structurally solid wooden shelves to a frame and panel sides in a bookcase? I can't figure out how to allow for movement of a shelf. I want to add shelves to contribute to the strength of the bookcase considering open back.
A lot of this I would need to see where you're going with this.
Don't you usually just have one fixed shelf and then you can have movable
But he's talking about a
shelves?
frame and panel. So think about the hall tree.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why the hall tree is actually a plywood box with a faux frame and panel exterior, because frame and panel is difficult to join to, and especially if you want fixed shelves in there, you got to find the right spot. So a lot of times it comes down to, if you're going to do a fixed shelf, maybe you have a cross rail about halfway down. If this is a tall piece, you can securely join to that and not really have any major problems. But if you have adjustable shelves or things like that, you're kind of limited to, you certainly don't want to join the panel, right? So you have to be careful with that. You could have points where it connects to your vertical stiles on your sides. It's okay to connect to those, but you still have to allow for wood movement. Now, we did the chest of drawers in the guild, the classic chest of drawers design. That's frame and panel sides. And what we wound up doing was connecting these little filler strips with dados, because we had to put web frames. It's a lot like having shelves, right? So these web frames had to have a method of connection. So we just put these little inserts in the recess where the panel lives, and it goes between the stiles, and there's a dado or a groove actually cut into that insert piece, and that was what we actually joined the web frames to. I have to look at the details to figure out exactly how it was, but again, it's a web frame. The web frame itself is not really moving very much, so if you have a solid shelf in there, you may just do something where you leave a little bit of a gap and secure it with glue at the front so that that front edge never changes, and then let any movement that happen toward the rear. But yeah, sometimes it could be a bit of a mental challenge. If you send me a sketch of something that you have, maybe I can help you work through it with more specifics on that. Chris Kalnassi wrote in, he says, my Incra 5000 comes in today. You know, I think we should have gotten stock in Incra. The amount that we've talked about the Incra 5000, I think we've probably encouraged a number of people to go buy that incredibly expensive crosscut sled. He says, my Incra 5000 comes in today, and I have some mitering projects coming up. The gilding, Greene and Greene blanket chest in the Guild. What would you rather use, that or your miter saw for 45 or other non-90 degree cuts? I feel like with the stops included, you can get very accurate results with the Incra. Either one is pretty good, Chris. I actually like, for things that fit within the space and the capacity of the Incra 5000, I think that's going to be your best bet. You know, I can tell you right now with my miter station, it works pretty well, but I do have a little bit of difficulty in getting absolute perfect consistency, even with my little stop block in place. So I think if I were really building something very sensitive, I'd rather use that Incra, and the Incra is going to, I mean, that's what it's made for. As long as it fits within the capacity of that telescoping fence, you're going to get great results there.
I just wanted to say thank you to Matthew Fish for the super chat and Eric Kovac, who said, boop.
Boop to you, my friend.
I don't know if he's talking about the podcast boop or just boop.
Maybe he's just boop. He's just pinching me in the nipple.
Boop.
Yeah, I like when somebody does that. Okay, so Cody Kellogg wrote in. He says, hi, Mark. I recently completed a bandsaw box for my daughter, Aveline, her third birthday. Made it out of maple sandwiched between cedar in the shape of an A. And I've got a little picture that's going to cover our faces here. You guys will like that. So it's right there in the middle. So basically, let me sum up his question. He's, shaping, sanding, working the outside, perimeter and trying to get those woods to play well together. So his problem is that cedar interior is a lot softer than the outside hardwood. Mm-hmm. So as he's processing it, he's finding it just isn't playing nicely. As he's trying to shape everything, it might dig into the softwood a little bit more, and he's just looking for advice on how better to work with something like that. So the way I would approach it, I mean, it depends on exactly what the operation is, but I think you should really focus your attention on the hard surfaces. So the outer surfaces provide 2 points of contact, and if you are doing work with an item, whether it's a sanding block, a rasp, whatever it is, really focus on the outside. And if you can span the distance, you don't have to worry about shaping the cedar at all. Shape the outsides. The cedar will just go with it. This kind of reminds me of when I put brass pins into a hardwood surface, maybe decorative or as dowels or something. You really, as you have that file on the surface, it's kind of a mental energy thing. You focus on a certain point and then your hands just kind of make it happen. So I like to very carefully focus on my pressure on that dowel, because if I just kind of think of working the whole surface, I'm going to wind up gouging the wood. But you focus on that one point and it's just a little bit more effective. So that's why I'm thinking you need something that spans the whole distance, can bridge that gap, and you're working the whole thing at once, focusing your attention on the walnut, and don't focus at all on the cedar, and it's just, you shouldn't really have any major problems with that. That's kind of vague, but it depends on the exact operation you're doing. That's how I would go about it.
Triple J Customs Jose.
Jose!
Hola, Spags. Mark, thank you for the info on the router ordered it this morning.
Oh, good. He was looking for a recommendation for the Bosch router.
Which one did you recommend?
The one that I had last year-ish. It's a little combo set. It's one of their nicer ones. I like it. It's got the 2 different bases.
Speaking of product routers, because I was like, it's probably in the Amazon store, right?
Oh, it's definitely something we've talked about before.
I'm going to add, since we're talking about it, I'm going to add Nicholas's book. If you're interested, Run Into the Sound of the Guns. I'm going to add it to our Friday Live section of the Amazon store. So if you go to amazon.com/shop/the WoodWhisperer, it's underneath the Friday Live category. It'll be there.
Excellent. Aaron Pena, or Pena, I don't see, what's the little squiggly line that goes above the N in Spanish?
A tilde, maybe?
I don't know what it's called. But he doesn't have it here, but it may just be a character thing.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Aaron, he says, I assume many people in this hobby and profession have a problem where I feel the need to keep every last little screw, nail, washer, nut, anchor, and other small thingamajiggers because you never know when you might need those extra bolts that came with your TV mount. Do you have any suggestions for, like when you get a new TV? I've done that before.
We still have like mounts, like because usually we put it on the wall. So we have I was cleaning and there's like 5 sets of feet down there. I'm like,
it's like, well, because you never know.
We have some of these TVs.
Yeah, you might want to put it on a stand so you keep the feet, but then meanwhile, years later, it's like, we don't have that TV anymore. Okay, sorry to get distracted there. Do you have any suggestions for organizing and storing these little things? Or better yet, do you have any suggestions or strategies for when you finally just throw these sorts of things away? So I texted Matt and Shannon this morning because I know for a fact we had this conversation on Wood Talk one day, and I didn't have time to search for the episode. So if somebody knows the number or has a link to the episode, please post it. But we had this discussion about what do you save? What do you get rid of? And
it's like the Lego pieces, the extra Lego pieces.
All the extra Legos that come with the kits, right?
Me nuts.
And they're always the smaller little tiny dots.
I'm like, yeah.
So we had this conversation, and it was interesting to hear how we have different approaches. Matt, for instance, doesn't save anything. Matt doesn't even have I was talking about like having little bins for screws and having one of each, at least some of each screw size. And Matt was like, why? He's like, I just buy, like when I need screws for a particular thing, I get a small box of screws. And then when I'm done, if it gets lost, who cares? The next time I need screws, I'm just going to go buy screws. That's a millennial talking. That's what that is, Nicole.
Oh, stop it.
It is. He's a millennial. I don't know if that has anything to do with his habits with screws. I'm more middle of the road. I will keep a stock of good new screws and any new hardware that I know that I use frequently enough to warrant having a collection. But when we're talking about the random nuts and bolts and weird things, I do have a problem keeping that stuff around because anytime I've done it, it's very rare that I go to that little collection and find what I actually need when I need it. So I'm keeping these things around for what? And this just becomes that coffee can of bolts that I think everybody's grandfather kept in their basement, right? Mm-hmm. Is it? And it just smells
an
like
old rusty coffee can.
Yeah, it's like an old Folgers can or
I know I have something in there.
Yeah, Maxwell House. I'm keeping these because one day I'm gonna melt them down and make a statue. So I kind of side on Matt's side of the equation here. Not necessarily when it comes to new hardware. I have drawers full of these little red bins, and each bin has a particular type of hardware in it, whether it's tabletop fastening hardware, screws, just weird oddball things, those little threaded inserts, things like that, T-nuts. I do keep all of that stuff around. But when it comes to extra hardware that came from something I put together in the house, gone. I mean, I know it might be wasteful, and there are people who are better human beings than I am.
It reminds me of an episode I saw, and this might give you a little insight into my brain.
Yeah.
So I watched this show when I was a kid called Amazing Stories. It was on NBC. It was awesome. Steven
Sounds
Spielberg.
amazing.
It was amazing. So there was a story, and the kid, he's like, he goes, and I can't remember all the details, but basically someone tells him he wants to be rich. He goes, you need to save everything, collect everything. So he collects and saves and doesn't throw anything away until he's an old man living in, but then as he's an old man, he finds out that all these things that he saved are now worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Sure.
So,
but in reality, the sequel is an episode of Hoarders. I'm saving these. They're still good. No, they're not. Throw it away.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
But you have actually helped me a lot. Release.
Helping you purge?
I'm a pack rat. I just can't.
And I'm the opposite.
He's the opposite. He throws everything out or gives it away.
People are going to get mad.
Well, not everything, but pretty close.
I try to give as much away as possible.
Yes.
If it's got a lot of value, if I can sell it, I sell it. If I can't, and then we're not talking about like brand new tools and stuff like that. We're just, again, back to this conversation of little things that are only valuable if you need that specific little thing.
Yes.
And why hold on to it if you don't? They do make organizers, those little pull-out trays. You can get them in Home Depot or whatever, little plastic organizers. That's what my stepdad used to have. Arch had in the basement, and he would try to keep it organized. Here's one for roughly the same size bolt. Here's one for screws, washers, whatever. I can't do that, guys. Yeah. That's not me.
Kentor GOT said, "Oh my God, I remember that episode." If you want to walk down memory lane, last time I checked on Amazon Prime, the first season of Amazing Stories is streaming on Amazon Prime. So there you go. The show holds up really great.
I guess I should address the little black elephant in the room. Mike wants to know if I'm going bowling after the show.
Somebody said you look like Kingpin. You still haven't watched Kingpin, so you wouldn't get the Munson reference.
Okay. Someone said, I mentioned this to you, sent me a clip from Family Guy where Lois is wearing it for the undiagnosed mom disease. I actually have tendonitis in my wrist, and it's been something that's been bothering me for weeks now. We have very hand strength intensive things that we do as woodworkers, so I think this is something we all need to be aware of. And me, just my personal history of things, and every time I say this, people start to go in a direction of, guys know what I'm talking about, the obvious joke here. I'm right-handed, so don't worry about it. Excuse me. So I've been cycling my little butt off lately, and I think I've been gripping my handlebars incorrectly and not necessarily having the best posture, so I've been working on that. I used to play the drums all throughout high school and college, and that is not a great thing for your wrists. And then, of course, everything we do in the shop, you'd think your dominant hand would get the most abuse, right? But the dominant hand, most of the time, is where the muscle is coming from. So, you're pushing a hand plane. What's the left hand doing? Just kind of holding the plane and guiding it. It's not, in that case, it's more about wrist movement as opposed to power. So this is really my gripping strength hand. If I'm pushing through the table saw, I'm using this hand to keep the workpiece down and into the fence. My right hand, all it's doing is just power, pushing forward. So this is the one.
Power.
Pure power, guys. This is the one that gets all the abuse. So it's not that surprising to me that this is what's going on. Basically went to the doctor. He said all signs point to tendonitis on this thing, which is it's when your tendons get the itis. And you basically need, it's inflammation. So you need to ice it down periodically, limit movement. This is really here to remind me not to do certain things. So, if I'm in the shop and I'm ready to go do something, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that movement with this hand. Thankfully, Jay is here. He's got my back for all this. Anyway, long story short, that's what this is. And no, I'm not going bowling. I'm terrible at bowling.
I have a super chat from Moose.
Hey, Moose!
I really hope your name is Moose because my cousin, my cousin's nickname was Moose. His real name was Russell. So he has a super chat here, and it was, I just saved it, but then I lost it.
Oh, Moose.
Moose. Oh, any
suggestions?
I'm maintaining my cast iron table saw top.
Well, your cast iron really depends on where you live, right? If you have a very humid environment, you're going to have to do a lot more than I have to do here in Denver. Rust just isn't really much of a problem here. So all I do is give it a coat of wax. Anything from like Johnson's paste wax, Renaissance wax. Recently I just started using Glide Coat because I'm lazy and it's nice to just have an aerosol spray, but Glide Coat works really well. All those will not only smooth out and slick the surface a little bit, which is good. It's good for safety. It's good for just pushing pieces through. It's good for tendonitis because you don't have to push as hard.
What was the Glide Coat?
Glide Coat.
I'm adding the Renaissance wax and the Glide Coat in the Amazon.
Glide Coat, and I think it's spelled Glide Coat, C-O-T-E, because they got to be special.
Oh, there it is.
Yep, there it is.
There's two kinds, the blue one.
Yeah, whatever. The cheaper one.
The cheaper one.
And it says I purchased that item, so that's the one I bought.
Yeah.
So that stuff works pretty well. That will serve as a rust preventative, I think, in general typical environments. If you have a high humidity environment, I don't know, maybe you're in Louisiana, you may have to go through a little bit more with your cast iron. A lot of people will use things like T9 Bow Shield or a specific rust preventative material. You put that on the surface, and then on top of that, you hit it with the wax to keep it nice and slick. All right, so that's those are the things that I would recommend. Other than that, If you're lucky to live in a place like Denver or Arizona, someplace where it's fairly dry, just a little bit of wax is all you need, and it's less about rust prevention and more about just keeping the surface nice and slick.
Oh, he had another question. When using a handheld router, am I supposed to go left to right?
Okay, this is a bigger discussion than we could probably get into here, but I'm going to give you the rule.
Do we have a video?
I may have covered it in the
Okay.
video. I've been doing this for a long time, Nicole. We have a lot of videos.
Yeah, I know.
And a lot of them have routers in it. I can't remember.
You don't catalog all of them?
Oh, well, let
You're
me
very-
search. Got it. So basically, with the router, here's your rule. I'm going to give you a scenario, a picture frame. You've got to route the outside of the picture frame and the inside of the picture frame. Here's the rule of thumb. Use this rule and adapt it to whatever you're doing. It doesn't matter. You can think about where the router is in relationship to the work based on doing a picture frame. So on the outside of the frame, you're going left to right. And if you go all the way around, that motion is counterclockwise around the outside perimeter. If you're on the inside perimeter of that picture frame, you're doing the opposite. You're going right to left, and if you're going all the way around, you're doing a clockwise motion all the way
do
around.
it enough. You're doing the Cabbage
Oh
patch.
yeah, I like it. All right, so that's the rule of thumb. Whenever you think about which direction to route, think about that picture frame situation and what those rules are, where the work is, what side the router is on, and that's going to help you pick right to left or left to right.
Do you have more?
Oh, I got more.
Oh, okay. David Hunter says, hi folks, I made a mortise on a project and need to switch to a domino. Can I fill the mortise with epoxy and then recut for domino plus use more epoxy?
Yeah, if you...
Didn't you do something like that on the media?
I did, but I wouldn't fill with epoxy.
Okay.
Or I didn't fill with epoxy. If you have no other choice and you want to fill with epoxy and you're never going to see it, epoxy's fine. But if you have the option to fill it with wood, I'd rather see you fill it with wood and then recut. So depending on what you have available, it doesn't take much scrap material to throw some wood in there. Heck, even if you get a loose fitting patch, drop some wood in there with epoxy, fill all the gaps with epoxy. I don't know, that would make me feel better. I don't know why. But yes, absolutely, you can do that.
There you go.
Okay, next one is from our good buddy David Wiggins.
Yay!
QOS to you all. He says, after
Not
successfully...
gonna let that die, are we?
Absolutely not. It came up multiple times last night. After successfully clamping the mitres on the waterfall table that I showed you, I'm considering adding a stretcher or something to help reinforce the legs of the sofa table to prevent movement. Would a stretcher be the best option? If so, he wants something relatively close to the top that doesn't break the visual nature of the waterfall look. How would you recommend I attach the stretcher to the inside legs? As a through tenon, or he says a through tenon with wedges or something similar wouldn't work because the through tenon would break the grain flow on the outside. Well, the only thing I could think here is to do a housed mortise and tenon joint. Now the problem is though, I assume have you glued this up yet? Because if you've glued it up, your options are really limited now. But if you're talking about through mortise and tenons, you must not have this thing glued up if those were even part of the discussion. I would just do a classic mortise and tenon. Just give yourself a nice chunky stretcher across there and span the interior, lock that thing in, and it'll do its job, and then it doesn't interrupt the grain flow at all. Easy one today from David. Mm-hmm. Corey wrote in, he says, I see in a lot of your videos you buffing things with the Ryobi ? Is that a repurposed hand sander or an actual buffer? And what do you use for the pads? Okay, so and I looked on Amazon, so they do have, I think, a couple of entries in Amazon for a Ryobi buffer.
Right.
It's a 6-inch buffer. It looks like a random orbit sander.
10 inch,
So it's
8 inch,
6-inch.
6 inch.
So it's this guy.
Oh, there it is.
And there's also scroll up. There might be another one down here somewhere. There's reconditioned ones.
Okay.
There's another one there. I can't tell which one it is.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just something I bought years ago from Home Depot. Mine was, before they went to this bright green color, it's like a dark blue. And it is a orbital sander. It looks like a random orbit sander, a little bit taller, and it has it's made for buffing. So it has a buffing pad on there. All I do is buy 6-inch terry cloth elastic pads so you can kind of just stretch it over the surface. That's all it is.
Are those the little things?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah,
ones?
they call them bonnets, polisher bonnets.
Is that right?
There's so many out there.
Oh, that's
that's fine.
$10.
As long as it's the size is 6-inch, it will fit.
5 to 6.
And yeah, so those work really well. I've been using that now since I've been doing a lot of Osmo and Rubio type finishes. You need those buffers to get those finishes done, especially on big surfaces. And that's it. It's a very inexpensive way to get that polishing and buffing. And it is not a repurposed sander. It's a dedicated buffer. For that. There's also other companies, if you can't find the Ryobi model, it is a specific format that several companies make where it's not like your L-shaped 7-inch polisher, those hardcore polishing things. It's a much softer polishing action, less abrasive.
We have a question here from Nathan. What's the most cost-effective way you can think of doing shop cabinetry? Can I get by 1.5 inch plywood? There will be base cabinets, not ones hanging on the wall. Didn't you use cabinet notch?
Yeah, but that's not the most cost-effective way.
Sorry.
That's the fastest way. But the most expensive. But what you bring up is a good point. I, in the past, would have never built cabinets out of 1/2-inch stock. It just seemed like, no, 3/4 inch is the way to go. That's what we do. This is what I learned. This is what we should all do. Then in Arizona, I was in a time crunch, and this company called Cabbage approached me for like a sponsored deal, and I wound up getting some cabinets from them. It's basically RTA, ready to assemble cabinets. They CNC the edges so they all lock together. All you need to do is add a little bit of glue, slide them in place, throw a few brads in there, and the shells go together like that. So it was awesome. But everything was from 1/2-inch material, maybe with the exception of the face frames if you have them, as well as like doors and things like that. So what I learned during that process was that 1/2 inch is actually okay, especially in a shop, and especially if you're going to secure these things to the wall. That extra point of anchor to the wall really helps stiffen the structure. So I'm going to say if you can secure it to the wall, absolutely you can build them at a 1/2 inch. Now, would I still do that? I just made cabinets this past year, both a mitre station and totally redoing this corner of the shop, this little alcove, and I went with 3/4 inch. Just made me feel better. All of the dados and grooves and rabbets just gives you more material to work with. Part of the Cabbage thing is their patented shape of the way they have this interlocking joinery that makes it work. So if you can kind of get close to that, 1/2 inch doesn't really leave you with much material for cutting grooves and fitting everything together. But again, that said, if it's good quality 1/2 inch stock, you have decent joinery, maybe you're reinforcing with brad nails and glue, and you're securing to the wall, you can use 1/2 inch. Should you? That's going to be up to you.
We have a question here from Alex Kilpatrick. Mark, besides buying better plywood, how can you prevent blue painter's tape from marring the surface of your plywood when you remove it?
Well,
does it?
It doesn't often do that for me.
I mean,
there are words that are trying to come out of my mouth, they just can't. It may very well be what you're saying, the plywood itself. It may not even be a quality issue. It could certainly just be the veneer. Whatever's on top, maybe the grain is just loose and you're pulling it up and you're getting some residue.
Dry if the plywood was dry?
Nope.
No?
I mean, maybe moisture conditions, I guess, could affect how well it grips. Here's what you do. Take that strip of tape, especially if you're finding it just is really being a problem. Take a strip of tape and you go like this. Put it on your shirt and then take it off. It will pull all the little tiny microscopic fuzzies off of your shirt and preload that piece of tape and stop it from being as sticky. Now, this might not be perfect, but I do this all the time. If I have a piece of tape that I know I don't want it to get very sticky at all, I just want a temporary solution, I will quickly do that, and it pulls all of that lint and stuff. And the tape still is sticky, especially if you have a clean shirt. I mean, if you're covered in dust, that might not be very good. But I do this all the time. I put it on my shirt and then put it down on a work piece, and that actually knocks the adhesive quality down.
What a great tip.
TWW tips, baby. I should post that on Instagram. That's a good one. It also removes dog hair. And in fact, now maybe it won't work as well because I'm covered in Dougie dog hair, and that stuff is relentless. Let's see, I got one here from Nick Silva. He says, given the excitement around the Hank chair, I thought I'd ask a chair-related question. In your opinion, what is the most comfortable chair that you've built? It's going to be a toss-up between the Maloof rocker, which is that's significant because that thing is all wood.
Who asked that?
Nick Silva.
Because I had a very similar question from Walker's Milling, LLC. Because it was the most challenging project.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's definitely not a similar question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it.
Nick's question is about comfort.
Oh.
His question is about difficulty
Okay.
level. The answer to that question may very well be the Maloof
okay.
rocker, so the answer could be the same.
When you said wood live wire, I'm like, yeah, okay. Sorry.
It's all right. I know. You're only half listening. It's okay. You're forgiven.
Pulled.
So it would be between the Maloof rocker and probably the Morris chair. You know why the Morris chair is one of the most comfortable chairs? Because you're sitting on a cushion. Mm-hmm. Cushions like an upholstery.
I don't find it that comfortable.
Well, don't sit in it. It's my chair anyway. It's mine and Dougie's.
The Maloof is the most comfortable chair.
So yeah, if that's the thing, I think it's an unfair advantage that if you have upholstery or an upholstered cushion or something on a chair, it's like, well, of course that's more comfortable. Like, do you want to sit on wood or do you want to sit on a cloud?
I want to sit on
a buttery smooth cloud.
The rocker.
But the rocker is the one chair that what makes it so magical is it is all wood. And somehow you sit in that thing and you go,
it's like,
yeah, I could spend some time in this thing. That's an accomplishment to do that out of wood.
Mm-hmm.
My last question here, Nicole, is from Jerry Demuth.
Jerry.
He says, I'm jumping the gun on your table build, but I'm curious, how are you planning to finish the top? I'm in the final stages of glue up of a walnut island top, and I'm looking for options to get a beautiful yet resilient finish. Best to the family.
Are you talking about the
dining table
that you're building with
Jay's
Jay?
table, yeah. I'm just a mess when it comes to finishes right now. I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. I don't know what year it is. I'm so confused. I'm trying everything, and I'm experimenting. And this isn't my table. It's going to go in my brother-in-law's house, so I could freely experiment and let him deal with the consequences. But no, we had a long discussion about this, and I am really trying to push toward these low VOC, no VOC finishes. So every opportunity I have to give a torture test to some of these finishes, I'm taking it. And as long as the people who are receiving these items are okay with that, that's what we're doing. So I have some extra walnut rubio that we purchased for our basement project. We redid a part of the basement for Nicole's quilting room, had white oak floors, and all of the floors in our house on the upstairs level are white oak as well, and they're stained. So I got the walnut colored rubio and we used it there. The problem is I overbought. So I have a lot of the stuff sitting around. So even though the project is walnut, you wait till you see the color and the way this thing pops when it's hit with walnut rubio. It looks fantastic. So that's what we're going to use on it. Now how that holds up, I want to be able to answer that question for you guys. I know this stuff is adequate. I've used rubio on Mateo's bunk bed. It's holding up just fine there, but that's not a table, right? I can tell you right now that my kitchen table was finished with polyurethane. And guess what? A couple years later, it looks like duty. It looks terrible. There's areas where the poly has worn through. It's certainly not the one in the kitchen.
Oh, I was going to add the trestle table.
Yeah.
Well, the kids.
Well, again, but that's
Brutal.
the point. It's a polyurethane. The thing is, though, now that polyurethane is beat up, if I want to refresh that surface, I've kind of got to sand the whole thing down, sand it to bare wood, and start over again. And it's not going to protect me from things like Ava taking a fork and going, you know, and all the things that the kids are going to do to that surface. So it really comes down to the strength of the wood. Is it a durable wood to begin with? If it is, the finish, no matter what you use, will seem to do better. So that's why I like the idea of these other hard wax finishes, not just the low VOC, but the high repairability. So if that table were finished with something like a Rubio or Osmo, I could actually go in there and within a couple of hours have a new coat of finish on there, refresh it. It'll probably look a lot better.
What'd you put on the round table? The round one for Jay?
That's an Osmo.
That's
finished,
Osmo?
yeah. So the refinishing aspects, especially on surfaces that are going to get beat up, that's an attractive selling point, you know, to be able to do that. And I could refinish it in my kitchen on location and not have to worry about stinking the house out because it's a low VOC or no VOC product.
There you go. We have a question here from Professor Lloyd for the question about the necessity of a domino. Lloyd.
What?
Necessity of a domino for the hang chair.
Yeah.
You should be able to do the joinery with loose tenons or 1.5 inch dowels. Is that a question?
Is it?
I don't know. I thought it was a question.
That sounds like a statement.
It sounded for a question. Oh, maybe somebody asked the question and he was answering. Sorry.
Professor Lloyd has the answers.
Thank you, Professor.
You should be able to. I am currently, and I've said this a couple different times, I'm not making promises because my schedule is cuckoo-ca-choo right now. But
when is it not cuckoo-ca-choo?
around Christmas.
Not really. It's kind of.
No, I force
Yeah.
myself to take a break.
Okay.
That's when I find my
Yeah.
calm.
Yeah.
And I gain about 10 pounds. But I am going to try, as I'm building along with this, I'm finding that I need to build this chair to make sure I can massage the content from the Hank chair build into the best format so that people don't have to pepper Jory with questions.
Right.
I'm trying to answer questions before people have them. To do that, I'm building the chair here in the shop along with the videos. Even got my templates right here.
Template.
So one of the things I'm going to try to do, and I can't promise because I don't know that I'm going to have the time or inclination to do it,
You
would
have
be
the desire.
the desire.
Yeah.
Would be to actually use a router to make all of the joints. I'm going to try. It's on my mind. It's a very important thing to do. I think the project will sell better if we do that, because you can't. It's hard to say, look, you can only build this if you have a domino, and if you don't have a domino, figure it out. That's not that fun.
That's not what the guild is.
It isn't what the guild is, but the guild also isn't there to necessarily rework someone's process. This is how he builds the chair, and that's the presentation. So I will do my best to get the substitute content in there, but I'm not making any promises about it. I would love to, and I hope we can do that. Because I do agree, it should be possible, but you do have to jig it up, because some of these angles are intense. I got a piece over there for the right over there.
Yeah, I see.
It's got like, it's a weird angle. So to be able to simulate that and try to get your router to ride just the right way against that work surface is going to be tricky. But if there's a way to do it, and I have the time to do it, I'm going to film it.
Josh wants to know what kind of ebony is used for Greene and Greene plugs. Is there more than one kind of ebony?
Yeah, you can use whatever you like. There's Macassar ebony, which has a lot of streaks in it. That's what Daryl Peart has been using in his. What you're going to get with that is more of a brown streaking in there. So when you look at some of the plugs, you may see those are brown streaks. What is the other type of ebony? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Madagascar?
Yeah,
Is it right?
I think so.
Really?
I don't know. My brain just isn't.
Somebody in the chat.
Someone in the chat is
Yeah,
absolutely going to be like dewy, but it's a pure black ebony. If you want that, just inky, dark black with no streaks at all. Gaboon ebony. There's one.
Gibbon?
Gibbons ebony. That would be the other type of ebony that you can use, but both are perfectly permissible. A lot of people will try to use other things outside of that. You could use like wenge, which once you hit it with some oil, darkens up quite a bit and serves the purpose of giving you that contrasting ebony look. Gaboon.
Gaboon. Gazank said, how was the barbecue class with Stephen Ragland?
Awesome. We talked about it last week.
Talked
We
about
gave
it
away
last
a book.
And even, yep. You missed it.
We are going to do, in fact, Nicole bought the salmon yesterday. I got permission from Stephen to actually do a recipe that we learned at the event it was cedar plank salmon, except for since we just finished the haul tree and had a buttload of alder scraps, we're going to use alder and do a nice alder plank salmon recipe at the end of the video. There will also be a free site version of this video, and I'll put the recipe at the end of that video, just because I really like getting thumbs down on YouTube. It's like just a hobby of mine.
I could not find sake, so I found some alternatives to sake. So we're gonna.
You also bought white wine from the grocery store.
It's fine.
It's kitchen wine.
It's fine.
No, it's not. It's salty and gross. Look, there's a rule amongst us chefs, Nicole.
Well, here's
you
the
never
problem.
put a wine in your food that you wouldn't drink.
We also live in a state where you cannot buy liquor in a grocery store.
Which one did you go to?
I went to the King Soopers.
You know what's across from King Soopers?
A liquor store. I don't want to. I don't want to go in a liquor store.
Jay will go. Jay, go get us some white wine. Little bottles of Sutter's Home.
We don't do little bottles.
Oh yeah, they do. Little 6-packs, little baby bottles. He's gonna come back with like a Magnum. All right. What else we got?
We have Mark has a question. Can water-based poly be wet sanded to produce a glass-like finish?
You got to be careful with the water-based stuff. There's different formulations. Brand to brand, you might see differences. When it's fully cured, you can buff it up. Now, whether it comes to the point of like, a highly polished lacquer finish or a highly polished shellac, like a French polish, I'm not sure you're going to get there with a water-based poly. A lot of polyurethanes, even water-based, oil-based, whatever, part of their property the properties that make them do what they do and their durability is the fact that they're a little bit more flexible. So the analogy that I use with some of these polyurethanes versus your lacquers and shellacs, your lacquer and shellac, kind of like a hard candy. Your polyurethanes and varnishes are kind of like a taffy. So if you think about those two things, which one of those are you going to be capable of buffing a high shine into? The harder ones, right? So the softer it is, in a lot of cases, the more durable it is because it can withstand a lot of shrinkage and expansion. It can withstand abrasion, but it is not necessarily going to buff up to a high shine. So that said, it really depends. A lot of water-based finishes have very different properties from one to another. It is possible that you could buff it up to some kind of a shine, but I don't know that it's going to be like that piano gloss finish. You just have to experiment a little bit.
Walker Milling still was not satisfied with your earlier answer to somebody else's question. So he says, what is your most challenging project to build? Do you get bored making any style of furniture?
Okay.
Cabinets. He does not like making cabinets.
I've been very vocal about my cabinet builds. Actually, cabinets in general are not so bad. Big cabinets, like the Hall Tree. Don't like it. Not fun for me.
I love that piece though.
I'm just glad it's done.
Yeah.
I would think that would be it. Chairs are definitely a very challenging category. Instruments, which I've never done, will also be up there in a high degree of skill and knowledge required to get them done, and also get them done well. But yeah, I would say chairs, instruments, those are on the definitely on the hardest spectrum, end of the spectrum for woodworking. By the way, Wolfman thought my wine comment was funny. So there, Nicole.
There. Is it George? Is that George? He wants to buy
Jorge?
Jorge wants to buy the Fuji spray Q4, and he wants me to add it to the Amazon. Of course, I'll add it.
Okay, easy enough to do.
Easy, yeah. It's probably that one right there.
There's
Q4
it depends
platinum.
on which one, but that's one of them.
There's also the Quiet.
That's
which
the
one?
Q.
Which one are you looking at? Oh, the Q4.
The difference between those is the gun. So
Okay.
one has the gravity cup gun, and the other is a siphon-fed bottom cup. But they're both the same turbine.
Okay, so should I add that one?
Either one.
Okay.
Both.
Either way, if you click on it, you can go to
anywhere else,
and we'll get credit.
Yeah.
So, thank you for asking.
He says either is fine.
Either is fine.
Yeah, and they've got they really in the last few years exploded their product line with the semi-pro, the Pro-E-Pro.
What did you use the Q5 on the Hall Tree, right?
Yeah, Q5 Platinum. That's like the big dog.
The big dog.
It's like I say, we could probably spray pancake batter through that. In fact, a few people have said the next time Cremona comes out, we should just do that and see how it works. Put some pancake batter in there and make some HVLP pancakes.
Did you say what the difference was between the two types of guns? One was like a...
Well, turbines, generally are a self-contained system and they come with the gun as well as the turbine itself. And Fuji specifically has two different types. So if you see two that look exactly the same, look closer at the picture. Chances are the gun is what's different. One is gravity fed. It's a smaller cup that sits on the top of the gun. The other is siphon fed and it sits under the gun. It's a personal preference thing. I like the bottom cup because it holds more finish and I don't have to replace the finish or add more finish as often. Some people like the top one. Maybe it's more comfortable. Maybe it allows them to get into certain areas a little more effectively. It's a personal preference thing. Honestly, if you have both, you get the best of both worlds, but you can buy their guns separately and just use that on your turbine.
Mark Rayner, are you a fan of StarCraft? Offcuts, or no. Nicole, are you and Mark going to play any classic WoW? No.
Nope.
We love WoW. I can't go back.
WoW is one of the things where we love the memory of it. We love the experiences we've had there, but
friends we've made.
The reality of playing WoW in 2019 is not what we experienced before. We're at a different stage of life. We just don't have time to sit at the computer, forget about laundry, forget to eat.
You know when we will play? When the kids are older and are like, I don't want to be around you, Mom, Dad. And we're like, fine, we'll go play some video games.
Yeah, we'll find something else to do. Well, we play now. It's just we play in spurts after 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's rough.
Anything else?
Nick wants to know, do you have any good after drill press depth stops that isn't a 2-nut adjustment type? What?
No.
No.
I don't. I've never looked into that. I had to think about what he was saying. So the depth stops on drill presses are usually just 2 nuts that you rotate and they make contact. And he's right. They're kind of a pain in the butt. I will say the one on the Powermatic is pretty nice. You've got a little spring-loaded button and you could use that to quickly adjust where you want to go. And then you could rotate it to make more fine adjustment to it. I find that pretty adequate. I don't know if there's an aftermarket option that simulates that, but the one that comes with the Powermatic drill press is pretty nice. It's not the 2-nut style, it's a single nut with a quick release.
There's a lot of thank yous in the chat. People, I think, first time.
For what?
Just saying thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
letting us do what we do. Yeah. Letting us talk to you for an hour.
Brent Fowler said he's been a fan for a while, and he's currently listening to the 63rd episode of the Wood Talk podcast.
Oh, baby, you got a ways to go.
Yeah. So he's been
Wait till he finds out that it's not around anymore. Oh, don't want to ruin the surprise ending.
Spoiler.
Actually, I just texted the guys and I'm like, hey, looking at the calendar, boys, we got a show to do in July. We better start the show notes now. But yeah, we're on a quarterly schedule roughly now, and I think that is finally a Wood Talk schedule I can commit to and be happy about it.
My Ladies Elite has turned into a monthly show.
Yeah.
Because I just don't play as many video games as I used to.
That you don't. Gazang says, don't spoil the ending. All right, what else we got? Anything?
I think that's it. Let me just double check my super chats because I would hate to have left someone off here.
Dan says, look at McMaster Carr, that they sell the nuts that Powermatic uses.
Okay.
And all you need is a way to anchor that to the top of the drill press and have some kind of threaded rod at the top. Although I think it's a special kind of threaded rod, but anyway.
Tim
I'm talking about
Wise,
stuff I don't understand.
I would have missed your super chat. He just said, no reason, just cuz. That's all. Well, thank you, Tim.
Okay.
And then also Kenneth Dunn. I can't remember if I said thank you, but he didn't have a question. He just did a super chat. So.
Okay, I think we could wrap it up. It's 10 o'clock.
Yep, 10 o'clock.
Wow, we would normally just be starting right now.
Yeah, I know.
What a waste the last hour would have been in the shop. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you hanging out with us for an hour.
One more. I really like this question. Jason DiRocco says, who would you consider your woodworking inspiration? Has it changed over the years?
I think one of my originals, and I bet you a lot of people in the chat
question.
can answer this question for me. David Marks was probably my biggest early and ongoing influence and inspiration.
DJMarks.com.
Yeah, just the type of things he builds. You'll see a lot of influence into things that I make if you take it one step further. That's a funny thing about what we do. If you frequent something like Instagram, it doesn't give you the history, right? You see somebody build something, you think that's their thing, and then you watch someone else who builds something like that and you go, hey,
he copied them.
That looks just like Mark Spagnolo's thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, got news for you, there ain't a bit of originality in anything that I do. Like, I try to put my spin on it, but ultimately, this stuff goes back one level deeper. And then when you look at David's work, his stuff goes back a couple levels deeper to Krenov and to other people that were inspirations for him. And unfortunately, you don't necessarily see that paper trail like when people post pictures.
Unless the woodworker says, these were my inspirations.
Yeah, and I try to do that.
Yeah.
Like the dining table right now, it's in the mid-century modern style, which is not a style that I build in. It's not a style that I even have a whole lot of interest in. But when I started to put pencil to paper and designing something for this table, this is what came out. And it's not hard to figure out why.
Jory.
I just spent time with Jory Brigham, and the guy is, this is what he specializes in. He takes mid-century modern and puts his own spin on it. So I absolutely have to spend time thanking him for the influence, even though it's a period and style.
Who influenced him, I wonder? Like
Lots of people, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, and that's the one thing that I learned, because I would always watch Woodworks with you, is like the more time you spend with other woodworkers, their influence seeps into you, and like it's this whole thing that happens.
Our period sync up.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what happens.
Well, and these days,
I think it's really cool.
These days, I get inspiration from some, Instagrammers that I follow. Just a shout out to some of my favorites: Philip Morley, Ramon. He's awesome. Just a cool dude. And he does great work. Let's see, who else? And David Marks, he looks like he's even pushing a little bit more on Instagram these days. But those are just some of them, like when their stuff shows up in my feed, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. I just love looking at what they do. If you really want inspiration, you can follow Fine Woodworking and get a nice selection of woodworking memes these days.
Yeah.
Gotta love that. But yeah, there's tons of inspiration out there, especially on Instagram. I think that's a good place to go. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Jason, I liked your question so much, I'm going to give you a guild project. So there you go. Email me, Nicole@thewoodwhisperer.com, and I will get you set up. And of course, we had 3 more super chats come in while you were talking.
Oh boy.
Alex Kilpatrick, just making a late super chat, so Nicole will miss it.
Nope.
I didn't miss it.
She got you.
I got you.
Someone mentioned Norm Abram.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
thing. I mean, with Norm, it was just watching the New Yankee Workshop. It was just comforting. There was something comforting about it, and I definitely learned a lot. I never really built anything in a style that Norm builds outside of shop furniture. I did build some of the shop furniture stuff, but you can't knock it. It's just good quality classic woodworking. So Norm was a big inspiration. In fact, I don't know if he's going to get it, but I sent Norm a copy of my book.
That's really nice.
And I don't know if he's going to see it.
He's going to go, yeah.
So I talked to Kevin O'Connor on Instagram periodically, and I asked him if he'd like a copy. And so I sent him one, and I said, look, maybe this is bad. Like, I don't know if this is the way you go about this stuff, but I'm not going to ask for Norm's contact info. I'm just going to send you a book for Norm, and when you see him, if you feel like it, give it to him. If not, give it to the library, and they'll have a book that thanks Norm for inspiration. So maybe there's a chance Norm will see my book.
Create to Make said, have a great day, and did a super chat. So you too, Create to Make.
Awesome.
And the final, this is it. If there's a super chat that comes after, we're gonna roll it to next week. Johnny Matney says, router use needs pictures and videos to understand. I'm not sure what that means.
I think he's talking about router directionality, that discussion we had.
Oh.
He's absolutely right. You need to see it, but that's why I use the picture frame concept, because everyone can think about a square because you got an outer perimeter and inner perimeter. If you have to visualize it, good. I mean, just draw that on a piece of paper, paste that on the wall, and that's your rule of thumb.
All right.
What else we got? Anything?
That's it. Thank you very much for hanging out.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Scratch
your
my butt.
Nice.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope your tendons don't get the itis.
Yeah.
Because it hurts.
Yeah.
That's the itis. We got to get Jay his own, we just keep a microphone on a stand.
Yeah.
So that
he can be the laugh track?
Yeah, so he can come in and talk anytime he wants to and go back to work. All right, see you guys.
Bye.